All right, want to call meeting to order, the Finance and Rules Committee.
I'm like, where is he?
I guess the first thing is, anybody got any comments or questions on any meeting, the previous minutes? If not, make a motion by Ron to accept them. Get a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. And we'll move on to presentations now.
So can you hit the lights or?
Oh, yep.
All right, Eric and I are we put this together as a team, and we're gonna try to get through it. So we did this last June. So we, when we close the books in February, it takes Eric's team and the auditors some time to get all that information together, and usually about June we have the final 2019 budget numbers. So one thing we did last year is go through, once we have the budget closed, go through department by department, basically see how we did. You know, transparency with the board to see where our budget, you know, you obviously vote on it when it started, but I don't know how often you get to see it when it's over. So this is autopsy of 2019 budget. So, department by department, we'll start with public safety. District Attorney's Office, overall, good on revenue, good on expenditures, good on total. So, it was projected to cost the county $488,000, only ended up costing the county $474,000, so she's in the green. So, you'll notice green and red. Very simple way to look at it.
It must have been not.
We'll keep moving. Coroner's budget, I think we talked about this at length. So, you know, projected to go on the levy. So this is what was going to go on the levy. So it's not total
Right.
cost. This is what went on the levy.
And this,
Okay.
yeah, so this is actually the original budget. There were, obviously in many departments there were amendments, but this is the original budget.
So that's a good point. This is a good thing to point out. This is what you guys passed in November of 2018. This is year-end what they actually spent. Now, a lot of times we do things in between. We move money, we shift it around, but we want to show you how close we actually were to the budget.
The one catch with that is that it doesn't reflect that 8,000 that didn't get billed.
Correct. so that went into 20. Yeah, you're right. So we do it. We run on a modified accrual. So it's not pure accrual where you could get a bill in 2023 from 19 and we'd bill it back. We do at some point close the books, and once they're closed, we're not going back and plugging things in. Public defender's budget did well. It was supposed to cost the taxpayers $404,000, only cost them $308,000. Revenue, we don't budget grant revenue. And obviously, we just appropriated more money to the Public Defender's Office through that OILS program, Office of Indigent Legal Defense. So that was their portion from last year. We just gave them more that's coming from the state. And so they still have more to spend. Obviously, their expenditures were not matching the grant that they got. They obviously still have more to spend into 2020. Sheriff's Office. So, background. We, last year, went on pause with the sheriff, to borrow a term from the governor, pause. We went on pause throughout June and July because we were concerned with some of the expenses and overtime. So, this looks worse than it is. So, $18,000 they were short on revenue. We just didn't have a really bad winter. We didn't have a lot of snow. Our patrol wasn't out there as much. We didn't have a great snowmobiling season. So we couldn't bill the state for those hours.
No.
Cell phone 911 surcharge. This is a good thing. We budgeted $50,000 because we tried to be conservative, but last year was the first year that the state was charging cell phones. So you would have noticed that if you had a landline, you've always been getting the 911 surcharge tax. Last year, they started taxing cell phones as well. So we tried to be conservative, and we did, because that ended up being almost double what we had budgeted. Road patrol overtime was over by $48,000, and rec overtime was over $30,000. But remember, in July, they were already over like 30,000. So by the time we got to with the sheriff, put everything together, by the end of the year, they really did curtail and reduce the amount. Vehicles, and then you can't take this full 186, 189 spend because we transfer in 115 grand for vehicles. So that was additional expense authorized by the board. So if you take out 115, you're looking at about 75 grand, which considering they were, projecting to be much worse, I think that's, in my opinion, we did okay last year. We did all right.
Managed it
You managed.
after the 6-month point.
Yeah. Sheriff, any questions about sheriffs? I know we spent a lot of time on it last year, so I don't want to just trivialize it and skip over it, but no.
You got a hand up over here.
Yeah, from committee members, do we have a question? Okay. Sheriff's jail, again, that was one where overtime was really looking poor about midway through the year. They curtailed that down. By the end of the year, we only missed the mark by 23,000, which isn't terrible. Inmate board, we need to change how we're budgeting that, especially now with the bail reform and the discovery reform, because people just aren't in our jail. And so, we typically have budgeted 65. In fact, Eric, what did we say? 2 years ago, we budgeted 85, and when we went down to 75 and 60, we just haven't hit the mark on jail revenue for, this is, people that board into us. We haven't hit that in 3 or 4 years. So I think next year we gotta
We used to
budget.
get a lot from Jefferson County, and they built their own.
And the
pods
best
stuff.
was we used to get really good from Fort Drum because the federal government paid a decent rate, but we haven't imported a federal inmate in quite some time. So we got to adjust our expectations for that next year. I will give credit where credit's due. Their overtime was projected to be $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 over, and they were able to curtail it down. It wasn't so bad by the end. So.
What was overtime billed for the jail staff? What were they just understaffed, or were the people on vacation, or what?
Catch you another time on that one.
You'll learn over time.
No, it's.
This was last year.
No. I think it's a decent question. If I could sum it up simply, that we created 4 new positions when we finished their collective bargaining contract at the end of 2018. So they had 4 new full-time positions going into 2019. What we didn't allow is we reduced their overtime budget, and we gave them enough money to backfill those part-timers. So basically we promoted 4 part-timers to full-timers, almost. They didn't fill those 4 part-time positions backfilled in a timely manner, which created a shortage. So partially, did we budget them a little tight? Yes. Partially, should they have filled those positions quicker? Yes. That's probably the most diplomatic way without
They get
rehashing.
time and a half for overtime.
Yes. Probation, there's fairly simple there. The revenue from New York State is going down for probation departments. That's across the state. When we get less, we spend less. So we were going to get 122. We only got 99. But luckily, we have a department that knows, when you don't get as much, you don't spend as much. So they were in the green. Cost the taxpayers $25,000 less than they would have. Emergency management, these guys always do really well with their budget. This is simply because we are waiting on grants. So our grant cycle with them, especially with federal grants, is never in line with our exact fiscal year ends. But the federal government owes us $21,000 for SHSP grant and the hazard mitigation reimbursement. So we've been working on this thing for 2.5 years. We just adopted the hazard mitigation plan tonight. You'll adopt it fully in July. Then we can get our $112,000 back. So that's money that went to consultants that will get reimbursed on. Codes, fairly straightforward, but look at this. $95,000, that's pretty much an all-time high on codes revenue. We did a lot of building permits last year, so good revenue for them coming through. Expenditures pretty much on budget, so overall in the green. Health and Human Services Departments, Community Services, good on revenue, pretty darn close on, it's got, less than 1% on expenditures, total in the green. So. Public Health, revenue missing. Eric, can you help explain this? Because
That's one where receipts from state aid were late. So, and we have a February 28th cutoff, so they didn't come in, so we couldn't show them as revenue. So that's the primary driver on the revenue side, money that will come in 2020.
Is it in yet?
I
Any
believe, I think they are still waiting for some, 100,000. I think they've received a little over 100, but they're still waiting for about 100, I believe. And I can't tell you why, what the delay is.
For DSS and Public Health and OFA, a lot of what we do is reimbursement based. So our numbers are constantly in flux right up till we close the books, and then we have to wait for the money to come back. Expenditures good. Total cost of the county was 160 grand more than we thought, but we are owed money, so I think we'll balance by the end. So yeah, there we go. DSS. So let's start with revenue. 5.4 million. They only received 4.9. So that creates a pretty big variance. The biggest chunk of that is state admin reimbursement. So we, similar to what we've been talking about, seems like a theme of the day. We can't control who comes through the door. Right now, we're seeing. This is largely due to foster care costs. So the state does foster care in a block grant, and when the North Country is given their block grant of this, I'm totally making this up, but let's say it's $20 million, and our caseload stays at 30, but St. Lawrence County goes from 300 to 500, and Jefferson County goes from 300 to 500, our share of the larger pie is less. And so our foster care numbers have been very steady, where the rest of the counties in our region have been fluctuating wildly. So St. Lawrence and Jefferson counties foster care numbers are up a lot, which means our piece of the pie is less. So, and then if you remember when Jenny gave her presentation on foster care, our revenue source depends greatly on the type of kid, the type of situation they come from, the type of mental or physical needs that they have. Depends on what source of revenue. So we just had some children that were not as eligible for some of the revenue that they could have been. So we're short $300,000 there. Now, again, we're talking about an $11 million budget. So $300,000 short on revenue is not, killer. IGT was over budget for the 4th year in a row. I think it's something about when you guys hired me. It's just IGT went started going crazy. But the good news is that we've gotten news that this year's IGT 2020 we're not going to have to pay because we overpaid in 17, 18, 19. So, the IGT is a floating. It'll come back to us. If you overpay, it comes back. If you underpay, it whacks you too, which is what happened in 2017. Personnel, this is, I guess if you can say there's an upside to the turnover that they've had at DSS. They've had a lot of vacancies, and they've had a lot of very senior employees retire, which has created other problems. But in terms of the personnel budget, they were $100,000 under their benefits and fringes. TANF revenue, this is a continuing problem that we're going to need to talk about more into the 2021 budget, because there's 2 programs that do more or less the same thing. Temporary Assistance for Needy Families is a federal program. Safety Net is a state program. If you're on Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TANF, there's a timeline for that. You can't stay on it forever. And what's happening is, we got a lot of people that came on during the tough times during the Great Recession, and their expiration date is coming. Well, New York State has an additional safety net. Once you're off the federal system, you can, I shouldn't say off the federal system. Once that benefit has expired, you're eligible for additional benefits so you don't fall through the cracks with New York State at safety net. As our population transitions from TANF to safety net, it costs us more money because the federal reimbursement rate for TANF is high, the state reimbursement rate for safety net is low. So that budget continues to go up and up and up for us. And also when you have the code blue, you know, when it's below 30 degrees and DSS puts people up in the shelter, anytime code blue is activated, that's all under safety net. Office for the Aging, revenue up, expenses down, overall pretty good, but don't forget, last year's report, they were in the negative 400,000 because they were owed money like public health was this year.
You are the only participant in the conference. Please press any key on your keypad to remain in the conference.
Story of my life. Okay, so their budget looks pretty good, but that's because they were owed money from 18 that came into 19. So they did good, and that's very good. Public Services, County Clerk. Now this is not cost, this is net profit. There's only two departments that are net profit, County Clerk and
Solid waste.
Oh, and solid. Well, solid waste if they do it right. Could be fine. Revenue was good, up $80,000 more. Expenditures also not bad considering revenue was up. And don't forget, we moved the DMV last year. So most of those expenditures, we went back and looked, it wasn't one particular line item. It was, you know, office supplies was up a little because we had to buy, you know, some new things over there. You know, just all their line items just were over a little from the move. So overall, they brought in more money to the county than we thought by a tune of $60,000, which is pretty good. Highway Department, revenue good, expenditures not so good. Overall budget works out okay. They're in the green, 28,000. Some of the revenue is because the salt rate went up for towns. We renegotiated that contract, you might remember. Hospital plowing contract from 18 wasn't paid until 2019. We received multimodal funds from 18 into 19, and we did overspend overtime by $30,000. So that was something that we're going to have to talk with those guys about. But overall, decent, you know, not too bad.
One other piece of information we just got today, there was the Copenhagen Wind Project had a $170,000 additional expense for road work that I think we had to do the work, but then we got repaid by the wind company, so that caused an expense in the revenue, $170,000. So.
Highway machinery. So this is the fund that we put money into and then charge ourselves out of it our machinery and operational costs for all of our equipment. So just a note on this, you might remember at the 2020 budget we actually increased our contribution, our tax levy, to the highway department for the first time in years because we weren't funding this properly. So last year, or 2 years ago, well, last year they were planning on losing $107,000 out of that fund. So that means we would have used fund balance. And if we did that every year, which we had for the last 5 years, the board puts in $500,000 into this account, and then every year it slowly gets eroded because we weren't putting in the revenue compared to expenditures. Our expenditures were always exceeding revenue. So what we did is at the end of 19, we put new money into that fund, and we budgeted in 2020 so that the revenues and expenditures should balance. So it's not constantly just drawing money down, it's going to be self-sustaining in the future. So revenue was increased by expectations. That's because the legislators dumped more money into it at the end of the year. Expenditures was down slightly from budget, which is good. And total was in the green, $258,000. And if we fund this fund correctly going forward, we shouldn't have to constantly have to dump big chunks of money in every 5 years to balance it out. Solid waste, again, they are a department that should roughly balance out. Money in was $289,000 above, which is pretty good. money out, which was 119 more than we expected, which is not so bad. Total 178,000 in the green, compared to we were going to be 150 in the red. So what happened? We got a lot of garbage. More garbage means more revenue because we're charging the haulers, but it also means more expenses because we have to pay a tank. So that, they didn't have more personnel expense, they didn't have really more equipment expense, it just has to do with volume of garbage. Economic development, this will be the last year we'll have these guys as a department in our budget because we shifted that to a direct contribution to the IDA. Revenue pretty close, expenditures, they didn't expend everything they had, ended up costing the taxpayers $20,000 less than what we had projected. Recreation, forestry, trails, and parks, revenue was up slightly from what we projected, which is good. Expenditures up slightly, which is not so good, but it's pretty close. And total, can't get more break even than that, Jackie. $137 off budget, pretty good. Trail maintenance, we planned to get $150,000 in revenue. We only got 115. We planned to spend 150. We only spent 114. So it's good that these two match, right? Because if you don't get 150, but you spend 150, you're in the hole. So it's good that Jackie can, manage her expenses to match the revenue that she's getting. This is our trail account, right? So when we're talking about revenue from trail maintenance, those are the trail permits that we sell. So when we don't break even, this has to go the trail maintenance reserve fund. So we had to take $1,000 out of the trail maintenance reserve. 2020 budget projects a more realistic revenue for this line item. So we haven't hit $150,000 in trail permits ever. So why do we keep budgeting 150? So I think this year we budgeted 95 or 100, which is closer to break even. Real property, you can always count on Candy to be pretty close to her budget. 128, pretty close, pretty close. Board of Elections, revenue up, expenditures up, and that was approved by the Board of Legislators. We did the voting machines, which were extra. So that was an add-on mid-year that we ended up doing to get those voting machines on a 10-year cycle. So, veterans, pretty simple budget for these guys. Revenue up, expenditures down, overall pretty good. Weights and measures, this is just our contract with Jefferson County. We never know the exact amount until they finish their budget, so sometimes our budget's a week or two ahead, but anyways, we're pretty close. Within $3,000 of the ultimate contract with those guys. Planning, again, this situation where we're waiting for some grant revenue. They didn't really, overspend by $100,000. They're just waiting on $81,000 from the Lions Falls Bowl project. So once they get that, they'll be pretty much breaking. Community college tuition. So this is one we want to talk about. We don't get any revenue for this. This is a state mandate that if a student in Lewis County attends a community college anywhere in New York State, we have to help subsidize their tuition. So that's one of the reasons why community college is so affordable, is because county governments subsidize part of that tuition cost. Look at Eric and I went back and looked at the historical on this. 2016, we paid out $753,000 in tuition. Last year, we paid out $951,000, and this year, we've already paid out $439,000. So, two ways to look at it. One, it's an unfunded mandate that's getting more expensive. Two, we have more students choosing to attend community college. So, I guess that's not such a terrible thing, but it is costing us more. So we think we probably need to adjust this $800,000 budget because it hasn't really hit the mark in the last 3 years. So we probably should increase that. Eric, anything to add?
No, I've started to do a little bit of analysis of where is it coming from, and obviously JCC's a big driver. I think we'd have to ask them, is it somehow related to our new facility? I'm sure there's an impact there too, but right now I don't have enough information on that, but, you know, I wouldn't say it's across the board, but they're, Mohawk Valley Community College saw some increase, so it's just, you know, more students hopefully taking advantage and going to community colleges.
So, what about the individual's tuition costs? Is that the driver, or is it the number of people?
That's a good question too, Phil. I do not know the answer. I don't know if we even count the number of students that are coming to us for that benefit.
I think we need to dig in. I think the lesson for me is we budgeted $800,000 for the last 5 years and we never have once been close. So going into 2021, I think we need to be more realistic about what the expectation for that line item is. And I think we need to look at it in more detail and find out, you know, what's driving that cost. Because it's becoming more expensive, we've got to dig into the numbers. You're right, Phil, maybe it is tuition cost.
Well, we got fewer and fewer people.
It's based on tuition, Phil, and
I understand that.
a long
but-
time ago, it was like 30% of it, we had to pay 30% of the tuition or something like that.
Yeah,
I
don't
understand
remember.
it's based on tuition, but if they're raising the tuition cost and we're still paying 30% of it, then we're getting an increase.
So it might not necessarily be more students, it could be just more expense per student.
I presume that's the case because our high school numbers are down, I
Yeah.
should think.
It could be both. It could be more students with slightly more cost. You know, we'll have to. I would be very curious to find out what's driving this expense. You know, I think we need to look more into it. Administrative services, information technology, pretty darn close to budget. $3,700 off. Buildings and grounds. Revenue up because our revenue with the courthouse has been quite good. The Clean Energy Communities grant, remember we did the lights, all these lights were new. That was a $100,000 grant, so that means that they're gonna receive more revenue. So if you take the 100 and the 24, that pretty much accounts for your additional revenue. Electric expenditures are down. So one thing that the solar project does is that we don't get billed for electrical expenses, it's just taken off our bill. So that is starting to reflect some savings for us. We can start probably budgeting a little less for our electrical. Yes, Dick?
And that was reflected, you were in the meeting at the hospital board yesterday. It was reflected up there at the hospital as well.
Yep. So that was a great project, and it's starting to pay off for us, which is good. Total, good job by Buildings and Grounds. Supposed to cost the taxpayers almost $800,000, only cost them $573. Total savings of $224. Human Resources, pretty close to budget. Can't complain about $400. County Attorney, Joan, revenue down. Got to get her working. Expenditures are down in total. Isn't.
I'm just curious, what is revenue of the county attorney?
We have a contract with DSS,
Oh, right, okay.
3 separate contracts,
Yeah.
and so we get a percentage reimbursed to us as revenue for the work we do for DSS.
Treasurer, again, this is a net profit item, not a cost to the county. So we're supposed to make $289,000. We ended up making $493,000. So that's a pretty big gain from the treasurer's office. Good for them. Eric, notes on that?
Just what's up there. Definitely interest rates were good and helped from that perspective. Some fees up also, and then there was some decreases in expenses mostly on the personnel side. I think we had 1 or 2 employees that took different fringe benefit packages than previously.
County manager, get rid of them. $539 over budget. I wasn't expecting an applause for that. We did go on a trip to Washington, D.C. That was not budgeted, so that extra $539 is basically the extra cost. We'll take it out of John's.
Some trip.
Yeah. That was for the Great American Defense.
We drank 2 beers down there. That's where that came from.
That was the key thing. They were $300 a piece.
Put it on the county's tab.
There were good beers there on Capitol Hill.
Clerk of the board, $3,100. That's because Terry retired, and when she retired, she cashed out. Of course, sick and vacation and, 40 years of service worth of benefits. Legislative, this includes your special legislative contingency, which we really didn't touch that much last year, so you guys stayed in the green pretty good. So that is all of our departments, but I want to talk big picture because this is really what matters. This is the exact slide that I showed you guys last June, okay? So I want to go back, put us in time. Last June we were wrapping up 2018 budget. This is where we thought we would be. Now, remember, last year at this time we had a lot going on. We just got stopped by another IGT, remember? We were reeling from that. We just had to post-book 2 more IGT payments into 17 and 18 because we got that recovery letter that we had to go back in time and pay because they were owed more. So we had to go back into 18, back into 17 to post those. Then we had the JCC project, which we had to take out of the fund balance. So at that time, we thought, our fund balance, it was unaudited, was around $7 million, okay? And our cash on hand was about 13. So that, and then we had some of the receivables, which you saw. You saw OFA money come in, you saw some of this other stuff come in, right? This is where we are now, today. So we thought we'd be at about 7 million. Here's where we're at. Unaudited fund balance at the end of 18, the beginning of 19, end of 18, was 10.4 million. We plan to use 1.65 million in fund balance to balance our 19 budget. We only ended up using 262. So we actually came in $1.4 million in the good on our 2019 budget because we didn't use all the fund balance that we were planning on using. We still have to take the JCC overrun, which happened in 19, and some encumbrances and changes in restricted funds. Here's where we're at. We're at $9.4 million fund balance. So from last year at this time thinking we were around 7 to this year being at 9.4, not bad. Our cash on hand also went from 13 million up to closer to 19 million. And that's because we got the second half of the payment from the hospital for the JCC project. So overall, we had a good year, in my opinion. We used a lot of fund balance, don't forget. We used that $1.6 million of fund balance because we've struggled with the IGT. So we tried intentionally to put up a big fund balance in the budget so that if we have another big IGT program or problem, we don't have to go to the taxpayers for it, we go out of our savings. So we were going to use 1.6 million, we only used 262,000. So that worked out pretty good. So that's where we're at. We got $9.4 million in the bank.
A dumb question. What does IGT stand for?
Intergovernmental transfer. This is the money that we send to the hospital because the very basic way to explain this is when somebody walks into the hospital and is on Medicaid, which is a low payer rate, or doesn't have insurance at all, there's a federal program that will match dollar for dollar the gap between what it costs to give a Medicaid person an x-ray and what Medicaid will actually reimburse for an x-ray, which is oftentimes a pretty big gap. They'll give us that money if we put in our own dollar for dollar match. So, and this is on a floating 3-year average. So 17, 18, 19, 3-year average went up a lot. We had to go back in time and pay a ton. Now we know 18, 19, 20, we overpaid. So now 20 and 21, we're probably not going to have to pay at all. So it's always a floating target, more or less. But that's pretty much where we stand. Unaudited. So, auditors will probably shift some things around.
Our health insurance fund, that's not part of our fund balance.
No, that's a different fund. Yeah, different fund. This is just general fund. Just general fund. Questions? Thoughts?
Can you send that to us?
Sure, yeah.
And Ryan just noted, unaudited, we do have a draft audit report, we received it a couple days ago. Ryan and I discussed this, we're thinking we would have the audit firm come in and present to the committee, probably in July, if we can move the timing along. So I'm not sure if that's something you've done regularly, but I think it would be informative for you. So we're going to try and work with them over the next few weeks to just review the draft and have them ready to come and do that.
Brian, when you started this, I thought you said this was like the closeout for 2019.
Mhm.
But throughout the presentation, you kept saying, well, we've got this little money coming in here and this little coming in here. So you can go back and put that back in? No.
No.
So that money goes into the general fund going forward?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's modified accrual, so if you did a pure cash budget, then January 1st, or actually it'd be December 31st at midnight, no other payments can be put back in to the year before. If you did accrual, you could get a payment from 2016 and we could still go back and book it. Government, we don't do that. We have a modified accrual where we keep it open for a few months, reconcile some things, but once it closes, it does close. So that's how we do things. That's why we have things that float between year to year. Yeah. The goal would be to not have as many things floating. I think we need to push department heads to try to get some more of the stuff closed up before the year ends. Personally, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's hard. We're dealing with state and federal reimbursement. It doesn't matter how much Lewis County screams and cries. They're not going to pay us until they're ready. So it is what it is. All right. Thanks.
Okay, we, moving along, got a presentation from the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you for letting me come and talk to all of you today. I appreciate it. Did everybody receive the letter that I sent out and had a chance to look it over? Okay. So where the chamber stands right now is with the way our funding sources flow. We get in chambership membership money from our businesses. That money is then utilized to spend on tourism, advertising to bring people to the community. We get that reimbursed through the county, and then we can utilize the funds for the membership moving forward. That doesn't cover all of it, obviously. There are a lot of fundraisers that we put on. We have our spring fling, business after hours, golf tournament. This year with Pause New York, we have unfortunately not been able to do those things. So what we're running into now is not having the funds to spend on the tourism to then get reimbursed for it, because we're using those for operating costs right now. So what the chamber is asking, if there is a possibility for us to get the funding through the contract that we have with you that would typically get reimbursed, to get that ahead of time in the next few months, so we can utilize it as it was meant, as tourism, but then still be able to have the operating costs in-house so we can continue staying open. I know it's kind of a little bit of a money juggle that we have, so I'm open to any questions that you might have on it.
So we typically pay the chamber on a quarterly basis, on a reimbursement basis for services. What Kristen is asking is, because of COVID-19, because of our business community, hasn't been able to fulfill a lot of their memberships, our money's here, it's good, it's money that would be coming to them anyway in the third and fourth quarter. If we could pay upfront, as long as they still submit everything that they would have submitted before, showing that they used the money exactly as we would have, normally used it. But if they get it up front, it will help them with cash flow, so they don't have to, take a month off here this summer, more or less. If that makes sense.
So are there a substantial number of businesses that haven't been able to pay their dues?
We have about 63 out of our 350 members that were unable to pay their dues this year for most of the response that we've got, or because of COVID.
63 out of
$350.
And then you were short on fundraisers because you couldn't have fundraisers.
Right. Yep, exactly.
How do you differentiate between unable and unwilling?
Businesses?
Yes.
Paying their membership? We've given them different opportunities. We've offered to have like a staggered payment schedule. A lot of them haven't been open at all, so they're saying they don't have that cash flow. And we've offered some of them to postpone it until next year, and that's what the majority of them that say they want to continue their membership are taking advantage of that, but that funding obviously wouldn't come in until 2021.
Next year they pay it for 2 years?
Yes.
We'll remember that.
I hope so. I hope they remember it.
Yeah, right.
So are they still, but the 60 plus that aren't paying, are they still receiving the benefits of the chamber?
A limited version. During COVID, we kind of expanded our services a bit. I don't know if you saw the Lewis County, the takeout and delivery page that we opened on Facebook. We actually started incorporating all businesses in it and not just the members, because the community was struggling so much and we wanted to make sure that all of our businesses survived. So chamber member businesses would get highlighted more on the posts that we were putting out, but we did share information for non-member businesses as well.
What's the cost of a business?
0 to 10 employees is 105. The most that it goes up to is 450, I believe, for 100 or more employees. So it kind of staggers a couple tiered systems. Nonprofits are 90.
Dues are due in January, aren't they?
They are, yes. They usually trickle into about May.
Is this, if they trickle in, is this number uncommonly high?
It is. We typically have 25 to 30 businesses that take until May, but up until last 2 weeks ago, it was 90 businesses. So being back in the office these last few weeks, we've been able to follow up with 20 of them to come back on. But the 60 are holding strong.
Okay, so I guess that you're not looking for more money, you're just looking for some, a little bit early.
Correct, correct.
So there's a resolution that's prepared that you guys will have a chance to weigh in on, I believe.
Yeah, number 3.
Yep. So we just wanted to have Kristen here to explain, answer any questions.
Any other questions?
Was that money for payroll for employees?
Nope, it's for advertising. Yep.
Advertising, okay.
Yep. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, anybody got anything else? Ready for resolutions?
Okay. The first one is resolution demanding that the state immediately release the first quarter of enhanced Medicaid federal matching funds for the pandemic response in Lewis County to provide some partial fiscal relief to the current conditions.
Any discussion, questions?
Can I comment on that, Tom?
No.
Perfect. I just want
Too long on your presentation.
Yeah, you took too long in your presentation.
and I overspent by $537. So just real quick, this money that we're asking the state to release, it's our money. The federal government set it aside for counties as our share of administrative costs for Medicaid. This is not state money that they're refusing to release to us. This is our money that they're refusing to release to us from the federal government, and they haven't released it since 2017. So, and in the first stimulus package that that passed in the federal government, they actually gave us more enhanced FMAP funding, and the state hasn't released that either. So at least Stefanik actually did a.
They haven't taken it yet because they know that they have to distribute it to the counties.
Correct.
So the state hasn't taken the federal money.
Yeah. So the state is absolutely playing games with these funds. We are administrators of Medicaid, just like the state of Ohio, just like the state of Idaho. We as a county are involved with the administration of Medicaid, and so the federal government sets aside a share of money, just like they would for a state, for each county in New York State, because we're doing it at the ground level. The state of New York is refusing to pass those payments on to us, and frankly, I don't know how they can.
How much?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then when you count the new FMAP that the stimulus package just passed, probably close to $1 million.
The state owes us $1 million.
More than that, yeah.
Actually, the feds paid it, the state won't give it to us.
Correct.
Well, we haven't taken one from the feds yet.
Yeah.
They don't.
Why don't they take it?
Why?
I heard that they moved down to 2.5 or something, 2.5 billion or
Yeah.
billion.
They drew down some.
Today I saw something where $1 million was going to the counties. Did you see that?
Not yet, but I haven't been sitting by my email. As soon as it's released, I'm sure NISAC will send out a thing that, you should be getting it, but.
Did you say $1 million is going to 57 counties?
That's the number I saw, but I could be wrong.
That's gonna make a
Which
big
is not
difference.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a big advocacy issue for NISAC because it's not right what the state's doing. We have a right to those funds, and so that is one thing that our Congresswoman Lisa Stefanik has been on. He just did a big press release yesterday about basically similar, demanding that the state release our share of the FMAP funds. Anyhow.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution establishing standard workdays for elected and appointed officials and reporting the day's work to the New York State and local employees retirement system.
Any questions or comments on that one?
We do this every year? Okay.
We have to set the rates so that they know what our pension contribution is.
Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution authorizing a modification agreement between the County of Lewis and the Lewis Chamber of Commerce to provide services and activities in the promotion of Lewis County recreation and tourism and the promotion of and creation of Lewis County community events.
Questions and comments? Discussion on it? No comments, no questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution authorizing a discharge of mortgage for Lori Bodway.
Discussion, comments?
I have a question. I don't want to take up very much time. What exactly is this? I've not seen this before.
The county through, who contracts with Snowbelt Housing gives, these are like CDBG mortgages, loans to homeowners who consent to reside in the premises for 10 years, and there's other conditions they have to meet. They stay, pay off the debt, or they stay for the 10 years and the debt is forgiven. If it's a loan, they pay down some of the debt, and so that's why we get these mortgages, discharges from time to time.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution authorizing a discharge of mortgage for Sarah Holub.
Questions, comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay? None. Carried.
Resolution authorizing a discharge of mortgage for Lydia Roby.
Questions, comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution for budget transfers in the amount of $108,106 to department accounts for annual enterprise vehicle lease payments utilizing Project HAD capital equipment funds.
Questions or comments on that one?
You have 716 in the resolution, this on here, just so you know which number to use.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, I have two motions. One was accidentally left off your agenda. These were both brought forward by the General Services Committee. The first one is a motion to authorize Highway Superintendent Warren Shaw to refill one full-time MEO position due to resignation effective immediately.
Any questions or comments on that motion?
Bill, you made the motion, right?
Need a motion? Ron, second?
Phil made the motion, so that.
Phil's hiding back there. Ron, you second. Questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The second one is a motion to authorize Sheriff Carpinelli to refill one part-time dispatcher position due to resignation effective immediately.
You can do that. Do a motion?
Need a motion?
Yeah.
That's because he's gonna be governor?
No, I'll make motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, well, I made a motion, second by Greg. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Get some executive session.
Is this what
Oh, no, that's just a listing in case we have.
Maybe we don't need one.
Yeah, what time is that?
1? I'll double check.
Yeah. So, thank you for reminding me, Caitlin. Finance and Rules Committee. We have been trying to schedule this properly for the last 2 years and it hasn't worked out. But I would like our annual meeting with GKG, who is our insurance broker. They meet with us once a year with their principal owner to talk about goals, high-level things, how's the service been, basically look at our books as a high-level thing. Randy, I think, came last year, but I've been trying to time it so that they can come to this committee and give that annual report. We couldn't do it this year because of COVID and everything else, but it's tomorrow, Thursday, at 1 o'clock here. If any members of the Finance and Rules Committee want to come, meet the owner of GKG, talk about the big picture things that are going on with our health insurance. Fund balance obviously is going to be, a part of that. Really, we just cover basically, how is the health of our employees? Let's look, once a year, let's look 30,000 foot. How healthy are we? How much is it costing us? Where's our fund balance? And I would like whoever wants to participate in that.
Right, sorry to correct, it's actually virtual.
Oh, it is virtual.
It is virtual.
Okay, so we're
have a lot of event, we can try to.
So whoever wants to come, we can set it up.
Yeah, can come here or.
Or we can send you out the link and you can just join from your house. But
Are you going to send out the links?
yeah, I'll send out the link. Yep.
Who's the owner, just out of curiosity?
Gilroy. Right, but the guy that Larry Gilroy.
Larry, yep.
Larry Gilroy.
So you'll send the link so we can call in?
Yep. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. That
Will
way.
it be a Zoom meeting or?
Yeah, it's Zoom.
I'm pretty sure it's
Yeah, it might be, they might use a different service, but it'll be very similar.
It looks like a central.
That's tomorrow at 1.
Thursday.
Thursday at 1.
That's it.
But next year, we're gonna get the timing right. We're gonna have them come to the committee meeting so that you guys can see them.
Ryan, are you gonna discuss, we do have a fairly healthy balance there right now.
Yeah.
And are you gonna discuss, are there ways we can improve the health of the workforce, offering some kind of incentives and stuff? You know, we had that once before.
Yep. We are gonna discuss that, not probably Thursday, but my thought is our budget is gonna need some help going into the third and fourth quarter. And so maybe a 1 or 2 more holidays are in order because it'll save us money, it'll save employees money. The hospital is on board with that idea, but we kind of wanted to see how things shake out
No, that's
before
fine.
we go down that road. But yeah, that fund balance, what did we see today, Eric? 5.4?
It's up about $1 million from 2018, so I think it was went from about 4.2 to 5.2 in that.
Okay. No, I just wanted to bring up the concepts that was being talked about. Thank you.
What does that mean, add holidays? I don't know. Is that what you just said?
It would be a pay period where neither the employee nor the employer pay into the premium.
I get
We take it out.
Yeah.
of-
So that would be money that we would save. You know, good for the employee, good for us, but especially when we have budget. You know, if your fund balance is high, you don't need to keep adding to it.
Yeah.
So.
Anything else?
What about IT?
Director?
Go executive session.
Sorry. Shouldn't have said that then.
No, it's okay.
You good?
No, not very
Are you
good.
having an executive session?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because we need to know when it is.
Oh, it's on the agenda, isn't it?
On the agenda for personnel matters.
For personnel.
Okay, good.
Sorry. Personnel matters, yeah.
Okay, then
Yeah,
need a
you're
motion
right.
to go into executive session. Phil, second. Ron.
Did you like to leave another picture?
Going forward.